Welcome back to my channel, YouTube. Listen, we're gonna hop right in. I'm just getting my mise en place together. We're gonna use 1/2 of white onion and also some chives. Now listen, I'm gonna leave all the ingredients that I'm using down in the description, but I'm gonna leave the measurements out. And the reason why I don't like to make a measurement for a truffle risotto is because, it's all about the love. It's all about the heart. It's all about you as the cook creating the dish, okay? There's so many different variables that it's really up to the user to have the proper amounts of items, okay? So I think that's really important in consideration. Just remember, like, the recipe is a blueprint, but you as the cook bring the soul to the recipe. All right, enjoy the video.
So as you can see, I got everything here. So my onion, truffle, butter, chives for garnish, rice. My stock is already warmed up, and then we're gonna go ahead right into making this risotto. Some people prefer a wooden spoon. I prefer a spatula. All right, and remember, this is not a super fast process, okay? So don't rush it. All right, so once the butter's melted, you're gonna add your onions, okay? Measure with your heart, okay? This is all about feel. So once our onions are translucent, which, this doesn't take that much time. I always make sure your stuff is ready. So I just opened my bag of rice. Okay, onions are sweating down. What I like to do is then I'm gonna pour in my rice. Okay, ever so gently. I'm gonna do I would say about a 1/2 cup of rice. Okay, we want to kind of like get the rice moving a little bit. You don't want it to get color, but you want it to be nice and toasty. And so I would say I'm on like about medium heat here. I'm not like, crushing it. This is not high temp at all. And I'm not gonna lie, I don't like this induction cooker because of the noise it makes, but it is what it is. We gotta go. All right, cool. So once we get there, this is the time when you want to add the white wine. Okay, so I'm gonna add a little bit of white wine, and then it's obviously to your preference, right? If you want a stronger flavor, then you add more white wine. But what I like to do is add the white wine, and then I like to reduce it down to au sec. Au sec means dry, right? Okay, good. Once we get to here where you see these bubbles, when you see these bubbles here, that means the risotto is asking for more liquid, right? So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna gently stream this in. And then I'm gonna show you where I like to add the salt. So after I get my first couple of ladles in, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start seasoning. Now, I don't recommend seasoning right off the jump. I think what's really important is make sure that you have to check the salinity in the chicken stock. You also want to be able to control the amount of salt that you're putting in, right? So I think that's a really important note. Like, look, that's about how much salt I'm going to put in. As everything reduces down, it's going to concentrate in flavor. And I think a lot of cooks and chefs make the mistake of over seasoning a risotto when all of that liquid, they add salt. They add a lot of salt instead of thinking about the whole dish, right? So what's really important in a risotto is towards the end, we're going to add a punch of parmesan. And parmesan not only brings umami, but it also brings a lot of salt, salinity. So with making risotto, I make sure to go super light on salt. You have every opportunity to season the stock, or you can do what I do, especially in restaurants. I would leave this all unseasoned, and then me as the cook will control the amount of salt that goes in, right? So even with that little bit of... Okay, go ahead, buddy. So even with that little sprinkle that I added in, I mean, that's going to be almost enough, to be honest with you. But at this point, listen, I've heard a lot of ways to make risotto. I'm going to show you the way I like to do it. I think the risotto should never be left alone, and always scrape down the sides. I've heard people doing it in smaller, shorter pans, stock pots. I've heard people not touching it, not disturbing it at all. Well, listen, I'm going to do the way that I feel is best. I think what the most important thing is the finished result, right? The result is the most important part. However we get there is up to us. But, when it comes to risotto, this is the way I like to do it. Don't go crazy. I think the most important thing about a risotto is making sure that the rice granules touch each other enough where they release the starch on the outside. Okay, that way you get that ultimate creaminess. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people will, not want to not focus on the task at hand, and they'll cook a risotto without paying attention to it. And this is where the bottom scorches, where you end up, breaking the rice granules because you're literally trying to scrape it off the bottom. And this is no bueno, right? Risotto is a beautiful thing, and just do yourself a favor and take it the 10 to 15 minutes it's going to take. If you are a line cook at a restaurant and you have multiple projects, when you have a risotto and you need to create a large amount for a banquet, it's best to separate 15 minutes out of the day. And then look, for a risotto for a banquet, when I get to like the halfway point where I see the rice is almost translucent, I'm going to dump it out onto a sheet pan and cool it down and then reheat it during service. But if I'm in a restaurant, if I'm in a restaurant setting and I am a cook on the line, I'm going to take the risotto 90% of the way and finish it on the line, right? So you can pick it up in less than 5 minutes. All right, so here you can see I'm kind of getting aggressive. You don't have to, but I really want to develop the starch as the rice is cooking. All right. A ladle of stock. One more ladle. And then here, you don't want to create soup, right? You just want to do it as needed. As needed. And again, we're at the house. We're going to take this risotto all the way to the finish line. We're making truffle risotto today. And I know I'm talking a lot, but I think it's important. I think this could really help somebody, especially a young cook who is coming up in the restaurant world. Trust me, I've made more than 2,000 risottos in my career. And I've learned a lot of different ways. This is the combination of those, okay? Right now, I'm just tasting for seasoning, right? So I'm literally not going to add any more salt. You saw, I only put a pinch, literally a pinch. Here, play it back. I only put a pinch of salt in there because this is where a lot of cooks mess up. They will over season the risotto, and once it's too salty, there's no going back. So remember, as a chef, as a cook, it's always beneficial. Remember, you can add, but you can't subtract. Okay? I don't know how many times I gotta tell you. Salt is not the only seasoning. I can tell with amateur cooks and young cooks, they season everything really heavily, right? And they're not thinking about the dish, the totality of the dish. I know that doesn't make sense in like if you're not in the industry, but just understand as a chef, what we look for is, the guest enjoying the whole dish as a whole. When you're a cook on the line, you're just tasting a little piece. You're tasting a little spoonful for seasoning. And this is where the problem happens, where they over season it. Then the guest gets the dish and they're trying to enjoy the whole thing, but it's just ultimately too salty, right? The whole thing is too salty because they're eating the whole dish. To take that consideration. All right, so we're rounding out the home stretch here, and I just want to talk about how you see how the risotto looks starchy, right? If you look at it, it's kind of getting thick. This is really important to note. I'm scraping down the sides, very important. Always scrape down the sides, scraping the bottom. All right, this is not like if I were making this in a big rondeau, I wouldn't leave it. I would keep it on because you want to develop as much starch as possible, so that way. Ultimately, like we're not even finished cooking here, and look at it. It's already looking really good. The way to tell a risotto is finished cooking is when you take a bite and the granule doesn't get stuck in your teeth, but also doesn't break apart. You know what I'm saying? So like, I don't know, it's kind of hard to explain, but if the rice gets stuck in your tooth, that means it's still undercooked. But there's this grace period where it goes from being perfectly cooked to just a pile of mush rice pudding. So I think what's really important is you as the cook need to identify when that point is, and you'll get there. And so for me, that point I know is getting close, right? I'm just going to give it a little taste here, and I'm going to see where we're at. All right, literally, I literally just need 2 more minutes and we're done, right? It's super creamy. Look at that. This is looking ideal. All right, and we haven't even added any dairy in here except for butter, right? So keep that in mind. Now, it's thick. I know this, but it's better to control it when it's thick opposed to when it's super thin. So don't go adding a bunch of more liquid, right? We're just going to finish this now. Take the chopped up truffles. Now, this is completely optional, but I think when you're making truffle risotto, the guest needs to know that there is truffle in there. So usually in the restaurant setting, we would take the leftover truffle pieces and we would make that happen, right, with this. Here I dice some because I'm not in a full service restaurant. But this is tightening up a little bit too much. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add a touch of stock. I want to cook the Risotto, just a touch more, but we're in the 95 percentile right now of almost being completely finished. All right, now here's where all the magic happens. Key number one, we're gonna add a knob of butter. I don't use truffle oil, okay? It's not my thing. I am not a fan of truffle oil. I don't like it at all. I think it was abused as I was coming up as a young chef, and I'm just sick of it. It's like an edible cologne, but you're more than welcome to. I'm not bashing it here. All right, so once we're here, you'll notice the butter creamed it out really nice. This risotto looks delicious, right? It really does. So I'm gonna turn off the heat now, and this is when you add the Parmesan. So I highly suggest using Parmesan Reggiano. Don't use the cheap stuff, man. It's worth it. Parmesan goes in at the end. You do not want to add Parmesan while you're cooking. The cheese will be all curdled on you. So, boom. Now, listen, you're more than welcome to add whatever you want at this point, okay? There's no rules in cooking. But for me, a little bit of Parmesan. Then after the Parmesan, I will taste for seasoning. I'm gonna go a pinch of salt, and we're not gonna do any pepper in here. I think pepper will counter the truffle. We really want the truffle to shine through. Truffle Parmesan is what we're looking for. All right, cool. We're done, and now we're gonna plate up. You know you have the perfect risotto when you go to plate and it just sits down ever so gently. So I'm gonna show you what that looks like right here. All right, so again, I'm using the rubber spatula. You can feel free to use whatever you want. Wooden spoon works. I just highly advise against metal because metal will break up the rice too much. You want the rice to be complete. All right, here we go. Beautiful. Look at this.
Daddy, what are you making?
Truffle risotto, son. You want to come see it? And then all I like to do is just shake it ever so gently, and you will see. I like to serve the risotto in a bowl because then that way you're able to scoop it out. Chives. I like to use chives because they're nice and delicate. Parmesan. All right, remember, when you're slicing truffle, super thin to win. And then what you want to happen is you want it to slightly cook the truffle, and that's how you make truffle risotto. Thank you for joining my TED Talks, ladies and gentlemen. Now we taste. Perfect. Here. Okay, well, you know, it's not always going to be perfect. That's what I've learned. Whenever you're filming, it ain't going to be perfect.